Welcome to the In Court podcast, the podcast where we delve into the trials and tribulations of the courtroom. My name is Nina Tornquist, and I'm a criminologist at Uppsala University, Sweden. My research centers on the worlds of legal professionals, with a particular focus on emotion and legal decision making. I have observed criminal court cases in Sweden for almost a decade.
My name is Chloe Squires, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Lancaster University. My PhD work looked at the sentencing of individuals charged with terrorism offences, and I observed court proceedings in England and Wales.
My name is Nico Bögelein. I'm a sociologist and criminologist at the University of Cologne in Germany. My work focuses on institutional racism in court and terrorism cases. For several months, I have observed courtroom hearings on low-level offences in German district courts. In this podcast, we dive into complexities we have identified throughout our times observing legal proceedings to demystify what happens in the courtroom. And today, we have the pleasure to have Sharon Weill as a guest on our podcast and to talk to her about her research on court and terrorism trials. Welcome, Sharon. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hello, I'm Sharon Weill. I'm a professor of international law at the American University of Paris and a research associate at the Sorbonne University. I did a few empirical work at court. I studied different court, whether criminal court, administrative, military court.
Sharon, thank you very much for taking the time to be a guest in our episode of today. You are a very experienced courtroom researcher, and you've conducted a lot of different projects, some of them also transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. And we would like to learn from you how you've experienced working with colleagues from various disciplines.
Yeah, thank you very much for organizing those podcasts, and I'm really happy to participate. My two recent big projects were in court, were ethnographic, and were part of a pluridisciplinary research group. So I wanted to share these experiences because I really feel that it's very enriching. It's a very strong experience. Of course, there are also challenges, but this is why I think it's good to share it and to discuss it. So maybe it could help others in constructing a similar project. So the first project that we did was such a research within terror courts in France. So in this project, we started as a very small group. I mean, small, we were 4 people. There was an anthropologist, political scientist, a judge, which is also, I mean, he's not a practicing judge. He was a judge, but now he do a theory of law, and myself, an international lawyer. And then we started to go together to court and to observe trials together. So this was the first maybe new approach in our pluridisciplinary approach, because at that time, and we started in 2017, so of course, the idea of having pluridisciplinary groups is not a new idea, and there are a lot of research that are done like this. But many times, and this you can see in edited book of pluridisciplinary research, it's like everyone is contributing from its own discipline, and there is not necessarily a collective work on the research itself. You see, it's more everyone is giving his perspective, and we put them together somehow in a collection, for example. Our approach was in this sense very different because we were looking at the object together. So we went to court together. I mean, of course, not always. And, some of us were teaching and etc. But as far as we could, we went together to court. And then we were meeting maybe once a month or every 2 months, sometimes officially, sometimes not officially, sometimes simply after being in court. And, you all the time discuss about what you've seen, what you think. So this is about us. And then, of course, there is the meeting with the actors. So again, you have some official interviews, some interview that you are doing on the spot in the courtroom, as ethnography work is being done, in part is on the spot and in part is constructed interview. And then the idea more generally is to look about different axes actually when we do such research. And this is something that after I theorize as the way how to study courts. So first is to look at the legal doctrine, because many times when we have socio-legal studies, somehow the legal component of it is a little bit overlooked, and we don't really do legal analyze. And I think that legal analyze is an important part of this research, because this is the language that is used in this place. So of course, whatever is legal doctrine, and to identify how they developed, how they are transformed, for what purpose, and how it is obtained and how it is negotiated, etc. So for this, the eye of the international lawyer or the lawyer is important. And the work on top of this, beyond ethnography, of course, is to go to the legal sources, to see the development of the laws, the legislation, how the law evolves, what interpretation were given, not only by the court that you are observing, but also as the part of the legal architecture of the place. So who are the Court of Appeal, whether Constitutional Court gave a decision, a Supreme Administrative Court, etc. So all this legal work was also an important component of the work. So this was the first axe. The second axe was the question of the actors, of course. So with the sociologist, and it was much an approach of Bourdieu, also of Latour, to see the place as a laboratory, as a place where things are happening in itself. And this, of course, we have the sociologists and the political scientists who could really contribute to this. But then what was really interesting for me as an international lawyer to work for the first time with such a group is that I learned a lot. So even through their gaze, I could refine my own analysis, and vice versa, you see. So this was really interesting in this sense that also you are all the time learning things actually from your colleagues simply. Yeah, so the idea of the actors are going into two strands. First is to understand or to follow the bios of those actors, where they come from, how their development of career and kind of network that you could see. And the second thing is the interaction of the actors in the courtroom itself. So this could be also more an anthropological look, about how the ritual are taken into account, how the architecture, etc. So in this sense, you have both of them. One is more individual, the bio, and the second is the interaction. But the interaction is not only confined to the courtroom, because it can go more broadly to the courthouse or to the corridors and to the offices and etc., where we will do the interviews. So in a way, doing court ethnography is not only courtroom, it's also courthouse and the offices and the places where the people are working. So this lead me to the third point, which is the institution. It's to understand the dynamic of the institution, because of course the analyze of a courtroom, so it's what you see, right? It's one case. Judges are deciding on case by case basis and through a procedure that is already predetermined, but for sure the decision is a part of a wider routine, a wider professional routine, a wider hierarchy, a wider economy of justice, whether you need to be more efficient, more rapid, etc. So this is going to I think it's important also to see the analysis of the one court that you are observing within the wider structure of the institution, right? And especially you will have here the question of efficiency versus justice, the question of what knowledge the judges have from before going to see this particular case, how this knowledge is constructed, who are helping the judges to know, or what kind of formation and etc. So this is an entire universe about the institution. And of course, whether or not there are like maybe some, influence from other institution or competition or whatever, but mainly bureaucracies issues and hierarchy. And then lastly, of course, is the political environment, and to understand what is the wider political environment. So the wider political environment, for example, if it's terrorism, if it's migration, because our second research was on migration, if it's migration, then to understand what political role the law has, right? And of course, this law is a tool that can be used by the different actor differently. But at the end of the day, what is the role of this institution, of this law, of this case law, of whatever, of the actors? This is one aspect. And the second aspect is, for me, it was really always really interesting to see how the politics are framed on the trial. So this is like the inner critic of the politics, and to see who is using what and how. Voilà, so these are the four axes that I thought were interesting and that could be theorized for other researchers. Yeah, and we did. So after we finished the terrorism research, I did a similar research on the asylum court in France. So again, it was a pluridisciplinary. Here we also involve a lot of our students. So this was also really, it's a good way to involve students because there are a lot of hearings of asylum. So we sent students, we constructed the grid and they were feeling the grid, and this was the student as an actor, as the public. So through there, we had more than 50 observation report, and through their observation report, we could construct, how the public perceived the trial. So this was one thing. But the maybe different thing that we did in this research was that each one of us, of the researchers, we were like in charge of one actor. So we had one that did the judges, one that did the lawyers, I did the interprets, one did the rapporteur, the clerk. So like this we had, and it means that in every actor that we did, so we did first a collective interview of about 15 of them together, one time or two, it depends, and then individual interviews, and then to see them in court. So so it was a long process. It took quite a long time, but like this we had over 80 interviews, and it was really interesting. Here we were lucky, I mean, not lucky, but we could do this because we had our funder, which is also in part Ministry of Justice. So with this letter of the funder, the president of the court really gave us access to all the actors. He was sending one email, to all the 150 rapporteurs or 300 rapporteurs, please, if someone is interested in collaborating with this research, you contact the researcher, and this is how we got access to the actor.
Just following up on you being in charge of the actors and conducting interviews, did that mean that in the courtroom setting, you were also focusing on the clerk, on the prosecutor, like if you went for an observation? Because I think that's one of the questions that each of us observers in courtrooms has, that there is so much going on that it's sometimes hard to understand what you're going to focus on. So did you, when you were in charge of, say, the clerks, did you just look at what they were doing in a day in court?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So for example, if and I was working on the interprets, so yeah, of course. So you will more focus on the interprets, and then I could talk with her after a hearing, and then she will tell me how it was for her, and etc. But of course, you are also attuned of the more general. Now, it depends what do you do. It depends what do you need when you focus to look. So in this particular research, we all, I mean, me and Sarah, the co-director, we knew very well this court because we ourselves were judges there before. So we knew it really well. But of course, you always learn something new. But then for me, it was a new experience to live this court setting from the perspective of the interpret. And this was really interesting because I was like now sitting more next to her, not really next to her because I can't in the courtroom, but yes, like behind her. And I was trying to see it through her eyes. And then you got a completely different way of seeing the it's more anthropological like this. So I will sit with her in the waiting room for 3 hours until she's being called to the courtroom. And then in the waiting room, you see all the interprets and what they do during the time that they wait, so it's a different experience that from, just being in the courtroom or seeing this. Yes. So this is what we did. And the one that worked on the rapporteur, she was 10 days in his office. So not only in the hearings, but she was also in the offices. And then also when we did the interview with the judge, with the presidents, we could see how the cases are distributed, who decide if it will go to hearing, to 3 judges, to 1 judge, to an immediate rejection. So in this way, you could do you see, so it's not, this is what I said before, you are in the courtroom, but with your actor, you go also beyond the courtroom in the waiting room or in the offices, and then you can see how it works also behind the scenes. Yeah. And then, of course, the challenge is how you do something together, right? In writing, I mean. Yeah, so as I said, in the terrorism, we had a lot of a discussion together, and then we construct a report, or now it's a book, but it was co-authoring, right? So it's not like chapter by chapter; it's co-authoring. So it's a process that need a strong editorial work together for the co-authoring. Of course, everyone with his own thing, but you need a strong, outline to understand how to do it. And now with the migration report, which is only now, it's going to be published, and we are presenting it in 2 weeks for the first time. Here it was more, so we had 2 jurists, so they really did the chapter on the law. We had the chapter of the actors, what I just described to you, so it will be by actor. And the first chapter described the entire bureaucracy and institution, so it's like at the beginning, we show, how a file is moving within the institution. Then we had one ethnographer, because we didn't have the applicant. We didn't want to do them interview. We thought it's too much. We want more to do the institution, but we nevertheless took an ethnographer who, so we had like from the file perspective and then from the human perspective, walking in the court, how from the metro he managed to arrive to the courtroom, etc. So this is the opening chapter. Then we have by actors. And then we had the legal doctrines. Voilà. So, then, I mean, it's not easy to co-author, but then you need to think well how you construct this co-authoring, while the work should be well distributed. It's not one person that's writing to the other for everyone, but you need a strong editing work. And here you should need maybe 1 or 2 that do the editing work, but in a processes of co-authoring. Yeah.
Thanks, Sharon. I think what you've been talking about a lot is about the benefits of kind of interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary integration and collaboration. I think there are also quite a lot of challenges that comes with that, in terms of kind of integrating different conceptual, theoretical models, integrating kind of different experiences. I wonder how you experience that and how you've kind of overcome that in your work, especially with it being so kind of cross-disciplinary.
Yeah, I guess this, it depends on your group, and it depends on your approach that should be more or less defined from the start, like the general approach. And then, of course, it's a grounded research, so you should be really open and to see what happened, right? So I think that in the terrorism research, we had a really extreme good group, like, we were 4 confirmed researchers that we did already court ethnographies, and everyone in his approaches, we were all very motivated, to come to court. I mean, we were not paid the extra money. We didn't have millions. We just did the research, right? And we were every day in court. And so in this sense, and also our mind were connected, I don't know how to explain this. So this is a kind of an alchemy that just happened. I can't tell you why it happened, and maybe, but it does not always happen, of course. But in this particular research, it was really good. And I feel that we all learn from each other, and we all respect enough each other so to give this space to, so it just happened, really naturally. And I didn't see any particular challenge in this sense, because it's like when you brought something, so it was built upon, and etc. Then in the migration research, so it was like we answer a call, and the call was for crisis, this term of crisis. So in a way, we had more, from a theoretical perspective, we had already the framing of a crisis, so we needed to follow this idea of a crisis through whatever we will find. So here we had this approach, but then it was a crisis for lawyers, so they will focus on this. And from institution, we have, those sociologists who work of the idea of high crisis become the routine, and how they frame the work of an institution, and what does it mean? What does it mean for the well-being of the workers, their idea of what justice is, like good justice is a rapid justice, and etc. So we had those ideas. Yeah, and here it was more me and Sarah that we were the real coordinators. So we were more, like this. It was less equal engagement as we had in the terrorism research. Here it more, some were paid for something very specific, so they were less time, and they did one chapter. But then it was more a work of us to coordinate everything. And for me, the challenge was that it was huge. It was too much, and even the report, it's too long, so maybe next time we will not do things so big, because I don't know who is going to read all this. Then I mean, so the challenges were not really with the team, but you have other challenges, like what can you say and not say? This is a big challenge. How you work with different actors, that maybe we should have actually do more meeting within the different groups of actors. This could be really interesting, but again, how far can you go, with the institution you are studying? Yeah, so I think that maybe the challenges are more not at theoretical level. I don't think there is a problem of intellectual ideas. It's more a problem of the extent to which the people will be engaged and involved, because a different theoretical approach, and I mean, you discuss them, and anyway, from the beginning, you form a group that you think that, those approaches will coexist well together.
Yeah, I was thinking about how the first project on terrorism trials, how you got in contact with other researchers coming from other disciplines, and
Yeah,
how
how
did
the
you
group is
decide to start a
created.
project? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think they contacted me. So at that time, I was working. I did a lot of, so it was a long time ago. So my PhD was about international law in domestic court, and then I went to Berkeley to study the military commission in Guantanamo and the Israeli military court. Those are work that I did alone, like PhD and postdoc. When I came back to Paris, so I presented somewhere my work on Guantanamo, and of course it was them. So it was 9/11 terrorism, and then you had the Bataclan attack in 2015, and then this group started to form itself. Because they wanted to do this research and to follow the trial in front, and then they contacted me because they knew that I did it on other. So yeah, they were the two of them. They contacted me, and then I proposed them the fourth that I knew that he's already doing this also. So it was more a group that was from through the work. Yeah. We didn't know each other, all of us. The two first one, yes, because they knew about this call and they wanted to appeal the ground, but they contacted me, and I proposed the fourth one, and this is how we were created. Yeah. And in the asylum court, so it was me and Sarah, because I mean, I work with her for another thing, and then we thought, let's do this. And then when we got the grant, it was more colleagues, friends, that we know that we work and we wanted to work together on something, but they didn't have necessarily too much time. So, they took one actor, and then we took one of my student to continue. And then after we did a call because we were looking for jurists and yeah.
Can I just ask, Sharon, because I'm not quite aware of the setup of the project. Who was the funder, and was it difficult to acquire that funding? How did that go?
Yeah, but the funder is so they changed their name like 3 times since we started. So to tell you how long we work, so it was Institut Droit et Justice, like Justice and Law, whatever the name. Now it's Robert Badinter, but it's an institution which is funded half by the Ministry of Justice and half by the French CNRS, which is the French National Research. And they do twice a year or once a year, I don't know, a call, and they finance groups which are pluridisciplinary. So as Nina said, this is like a condition, right? But don't understand me wrongly. It's France, and it's a very low financement. I mean, I'm speaking about a few thousand, like, I don't know, maybe 40,000, something like this. It's not a lot of money, right? It's mainly you can maybe hire or one or two postdoc, but even not for the entire period. Or maybe you will have researcher, or maybe you will have so of course the one who had the position, they didn't get any money for this, but it allows to have people who don't have position, or to have trips if you need to go somewhere, which was not our case. Yeah, so the funder is not about the money, because really it was not a lot of money, but it's you have this letter so you can reach all the actors, because it's like Ministry of Justice. No one will tell you, no, I don't want to go to be interviewed. It does. So this, and then the distribution of the study also is really interesting, because they distribute the study to the actors. So in a way, when we write this report, we write to the judges, to the lawyers, to the actors, not necessarily to academics. Also academics, of course, if they want to read us, but it's really, there is like an institutional aspect in this. This is why I like to do it with them.
When we envisaged making the podcast, we were thinking about who is the kind of audience that we're targeting this at, and we were thinking that it's mostly likely to be people who do similar research, or people who want to do similar research. Do you have, as somebody who has done a lot of research in this space, do you have any tips of where people should start, or things that they should do if they want to do a similar type of project?
Yeah, I think this is what I'm doing, is saying also to my students, you should go, you should go, and you don't need anything, actually. You just need to go and to be in court. You take the court which is next to your place where you are, then you can just do it without necessarily funding. And of course, if you have funding, okay, whatever, you do it with money. But the research itself, I mean, if you need funding for your own position, so okay, you need to look for funding. But if you don't need this, I think you can just go to court, and then you go to court with people that you like to work with them. And I think it's nice not to be alone. But of course, you can do it alone. I personally like not to be alone. So you can go with your students also. You can go with your one colleague, two colleagues, whatever. And once you are on the ground, then you learn by yourself, how you get the access, and how you negotiate things, and what is interesting for you. I think you really need to follow what for you is interesting, right? And go with it. And if you are more interested to go in the offices, so go to the offices. You are more interested in the courtroom, go to the courtroom. If you are interested in one particular actor, then go for it, and I think that the good research is really because you like what you do. So I think this will be my first recommendation, just to do what you like. Maybe just to say a final word is that I really think it's important to pass on this this approach, and I'm doing it with my students. And I see, I had a graduate student, master, and she was following along a trial in Germany, and she wrote her master thesis about this, and now she got the prize of the best thesis at Sciences Po, and I was so happy. And you see, because once you open this door for students and they even discover this, because it's not something that, is it's always been taught, right? And then maybe you take them the first time to court. So I always take my students, always, or I take them to see terror trials or asylum court or whatever, or if there is a big decision in constitutional court. So you take your students, you do it in 2 groups or whatever, you bring the actors, and then, and then people get the taste for it. So I think that this is a really good thing to transmit, and also like these students feel that it's also concrete, it's not only theoretical, but there is also a professional aspect, and they can also comment dire, project themselves as one of those professions, so maybe one student then will be a rapporteur, one student say, okay, now I want to do law, I want to be a lawyer, whatever. So I feel, that this is really also a good, not only as a researcher, but also as a teacher. And this is something that you could absolutely integrate in your classes, and it's super.
Thank you so much, Sharon. This has been really worthwhile listening to you. Thank you for taking your time. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Bis zum nächsten Mal.
Speak to you
Thank you
soon.
so much.
Vi hörs!
Right.